Today, my guest is Yishai Breslauer. Yishai was a school teacher, and he caught the bug of real estate. And it's my pleasure to welcome Yishai. Yishai, welcome to CREPN Radio.
Good to be here. Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you.
Well, I am looking forward to our talk. I found you. I was on LinkedIn, and I saw one of your videos. And since then, I've seen a number of them, and I want to compliment you. All of them are succinct. They're full of power-packed information. And anybody that's in real estate, I encourage you to check out Yishai and on LinkedIn and catch some of his videos because they're good stuff. But before we get going here, if you could do myself and the listeners a favor and just share a little bit about your background, and we'll go from there.
No problem. First of all, I'm glad to be here, and it's good talking to you. Background, just like you said, school teacher for 13 years, realized that I want more in terms of finance, started reading a lot, started getting to know a lot, and to make it brief, it started with a lot of courses in real estate, which went into a lot more courses on real estate, a lot more reading about real estate, which led for me to do some construction on my own private home and build the second floor and then do all kind of stuff. And then the entire street, which I was involved with, that led me to leave where I was and to join a very large company called Africa Israel. And I'm sure some of the listeners pretty much know it. I became the head of marketing and sales. They trained me in engineering, planning, and all kind of stuff in real estate. I really got to see large projects and being involved. Later on, all kind of attempts, I guess, and studying about finance and funds and funding of all kind of sort. And at a certain point, I guess that was recent. I got into BDO, the accounting firm, which is one of the top 5 here in Israel. It's an international firm. Here in Israel, it's one of the top 5. The consulting group in Israel is considered to be, I don't know if still, but considered to be a couple of years ago, considered to be the number 1 consulting group, which involved in businesses all over the world. And I was the head of real estate investment banking, got to deal with mega deals, consult to some major developers, operators. I got to deal with asset classes of all sorts, from multifamily, hotel, retail, mixed use, and all kind of stuff, from financing, equity, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how I got to where I was. A little bit about where I am right now, just briefly. I guess I'm out right now after an attempt of starting my own business. In America, the numbers were not great. I'm in discussion with a few mega companies in the U.S. in order to join them as an acquisition manager. Still open, still out there. But that's my skills. That's what I know, and that's what I love. I love the real estate and the development acquisition part, and that's where I come from. And the videos, like you've mentioned, the videos I do came out of passion and out of want to give some good info out there, because I felt it's missing a little bit. There's a lot of good stuff out there, but today with the media, just as I learned from other people, I can today, after my experience and dealing with some of the big players, I can share it with others. So that's it. That's the short version of the story.
Well, I was going to say that goes pretty fast from school teacher to head of investment banking, doing mega deals. I mean, that's pretty impressive. So I'm sure you had a lot of really good experience there. The video that caught my attention, and again, I encourage anybody to check out Yishai's videos. The one that really caught my attention was you were doing a comparison between different asset classes, and you were talking about retail, office, and multifamily. And I think that, from my perspective, I think that the popular phrase, or the real estate that's really hot as far as everybody's talking about and everybody's getting into, is multifamily. And clearly, there's been some struggles in certain sectors of retail, like malls have come on some challenges in that. But I wondered if you could kind of take us through a kind of a way somebody from the people you've been dealing with looks at these different asset classes and how they would view the different asset, the opportunities and maybe the problems that come with that?
No problem. So first of all, let's touch with this. I'll start with multifamily, and I think that the advantage of multifamily is that as complex that it is, you have to, if you're the entrepreneur, if you're not just an investor, if you're the one who wants to actually go and manage everything and get the financing and do the whole mishmash, I think that the advantage of multifamily is that once you understand the business concept, which is complex, but you know anyone can understand it. The basic concept is pretty simple. It's people living in their homes. That's the bottom line. So there's everyone needs a home. Everyone needs to live in a home. So when someone tells you, "Hey, I need a new countertop," or "Hey, I need a new washer dryer," or "Let's change it that way," or "Let's make it look nicer," or "Let's add a bathroom." That kind of stuff everyone can relate to. So I think that asset classes, that's why it's more approachable for either the new entrepreneur or for anyone else who wants to invest. It's like it's talking the language of everybody else. I think that's why people get to it. That's one reason. And the second reason is that, in certain places, again, this is something that is arguable, but in certain places, the vacancy rate came so low that it was just not worth it not to go into multifamily. It was just the place to be. Right. So it's understood why people went into it. So that's about multifamily. In terms of the others, they require more knowledge, of course. I would put office on a higher level, because you have to understand. Even though that this is another example of what people need, just like homes, they need an office. But on a different type of scale, you have to really understand who's going to be your anchor tenant before you start building it. If you're a developer, or how to deal with a major type of a player, if you want to bring in, who is in that business district and what do you want.
Whoops, are you there? Hello.
Things that are more complex is.
Hey, Yishai.
Yes.
Are you there? We lost you there for just a brief moment. You were
Where was
back.
I?
Well, I think if you can go back just a little bit about just the difference in office, what the
Oh, no problem.
Yeah.
So when you go to, so as I said, multifamily is homes. People live in their homes. Office, for example, is still people need an office, so it's easy to understand. But there's another niche here. You have to go up a notch and understand a level of what anchor tenant you need to have, and what type of company needs that business district, and what is required for them, and what type of mix you need to have in the building. That's a higher level of knowledge. And now if you go up a notch, you need to know a lot more about retail. Retail is a different level because just like the people need a countertop, you need to know what your tenants need in a retail. If it's a supermarket, you need to know what a supermarket needs, and what's in the radius and what area you have another supermarket, and how many cars are going in that road, and what they require, and otherwise you cannot lease it for them. So you need to know a bunch of stuff, and what type of mix, and what an anchor square footage would be versus a much smaller tenant, which will come later on. There's so many things. They need to know that the bank will need the anchor, because otherwise the bank will not join you. There's so many things that are involved in that kind of asset class. What personally I like about it is that that's my personal, I like more complex things for one reason. Less people are there. Where everybody else is fighting for a multifamily asset, you have a lot less people fighting for a shopping center or for a value add type of a situation of that you can become, a mixed use or a shopping center or whatever it is. So that kind of stuff is I would put in that level. And you have another level. I'm not going to touch it right now, but that's hotels. Hotels, you have to understand even if you don't have to know all hospitality aspects, you definitely need to know the numbers. You definitely need to know the numbers, especially food and beverage, what they do and how they come across. So I'm not going to touch that, but that requires a different level of knowledge, and therefore there are less people as you go through that rank of how much I need to know. For example, multifamily, you said, like you have a lot more people trying to buy and invest in single-family homes, okay, and own single-family homes because they think this is great to have a single-family home. I'm not saying it's not great, but it requires so much less knowledge than acquiring multifamily, for example. So therefore, you find a lot more people. So I think this is basically how it works. Just one thing. You said retail. And you said there's a lot of problem in retail. And I've posted a long video about this, just briefly, to say that retail is not dead. Retail is not dead, and I get all those emails from all those large companies, and they're just acquiring like crazy. They're acquiring another shopping center. So you ask yourself, well, what's the deal? Why are these guys so savvy and so active when the market is like, when everybody on the papers, the Wall Street Journal and every other paper is like, well, don't buy anything. So what's happening with that? And the answer, I think, is you have to understand that also in retail you have different asset classes, different type of shopping centers. A mall is not a shopping center, and a community center is not that. And you have to understand, in a town center is not that, and an urban situation is not suburban situation. You have to really understand so many things. So people are trying to bury an asset class, which is not true. Because if you go to a shopping center in the neighborhood that is close to the home and has a Starbucks, and has in the bank or something like that, people experience it and they hear, oh, the retail is dead, but they can't find parking space in that place.
Right.
Still,
Yeah, it's so dead. No, exactly. You bring up a lot of things there, and I think one of the things that maybe for some perspective. Can you give us a sense of the size of deals you were dealing with? I mean, because I think that a lot of the listeners are probably somewhere on the side of either they're in a little bit, they're wanting to get in, and I think just for a perspective of the level of detail that you're talking about, as opposed to somebody that like you said, what a house looks like, you know what a toilet's supposed to do, that kind of thing. Can you give a little bit of perspective as far as the size of deals you guys were active
right.
in?
So look, a firm like I dealt with privately, I didn't do it, of course, but I'm saying a firm that like I dealt with deal, as a consulting group, deal with any size. It could come it could be as small as a multifamily project that needs an equity of $2 million and need to raise that for a $10 million, $7 or $5 million project, even less. And it could be this huge, large developer that has, or huge, large operator, I would call it, that wants to buy, this large building which costs them, above the 100 million, and he needs an equity of a 30, and you're just a player that puts in puzzle, another group of equity group to put it together, but you need to know the numbers in order to go and present it. So that's the type of stuff, and obviously not on personal level, but it was, I guess, in my experience, it was fun to just sit in a room and listen to the problems and the question and answers and see how those guys deal with it. That was exciting to me. Another thing that was exciting to me was to sit on so many countless conference calls that, and you see how they prospect, each other, and that was exciting to know that one question failed a whole deal. And you say, I'll put a note on it. I'll remember that. I'll learn from it. And I think that was the most exciting part. In terms of what you said, I think that there's something that needs to be emphasized, that there's a huge difference. You're saying that the knowledge a person who does single family in order to go up, I think they have to be divided. If you are the guy who wants to do it, if you want the ownership, if you want to be the GP, what we call the general partner, the entrepreneur, the guy who goes and talk to the brokers and talk to the financiers and convince the investors, and then go and get the general contractors and the project managers or the property management. If you're the one who wants to deal with all that garbage, which is what I like to do, and a lot of people that I know love to do, and you probably also love to do it, but this is a lot to know. So you have to learn so much. You have to read a lot. You have to meet with a lot of people. I would say join a group that consults, or join a group that does that and do it with them. And even me myself, I'm still not where I want to be. I'm still learning, and everybody else is still learning. But you gotta get on the train and start hassling. That's the name of the game. You got to get on the train, start hassling. And another thing is about what you mentioned. If you are not going to be the entrepreneur, if you want to be only an LP, a limited partner, a passive investor, then it's the opposite. A single family home requires you to know so much. It requires you, meaning you have to understand how to buy it, the title, this, and then the inspections, and go and bidding, and to check it, and to know the value of the market, and to know what the school district is, and all kind of stuff. You still need to know stuff. It's not the same level. You still need to know stuff. But as a limited partner to a multifamily or even a retail deal, you just need to know how much in, how much out, how much I make, what's the risk. That's it. You don't have to deal with anything. So I think that it's the opposite. For a limited partner, for a general partner, you have to know so much. You have to get on the train, start hassling, and you get there slowly but surely. For someone who is investing and just wants to put the money and see a return, this is actually easier.
Right.
Because you're riding on someone who is much more experienced. So I think it's better. That's my opinion.
No, I appreciate that. Let me ask you. So on the different asset classes that we're talking about here, the multifamily, retail, and office, is there a difference in strategy? I mean, obviously there's a knowledge difference in each asset class on how the asset class operates. But from maybe a step or two back, when you mentioned you have to have the numbers, right? Is there a difference in strategy that you see or that you've experienced that or can you talk a little bit about the strategy?
It's for sure. I think that every single field, every single type of asset class has different things in it. If I have to look from above at the multifamily versus all the rest, even retail is different than office, and office is different than multifamily. But in terms of knowing the numbers, like you said, right? I think that in a multifamily project, you need to know vacancy rate, just like any other thing. But you have to know one thing. You have to know what type of median income there is there, in that area, and what type of, meaning what are the family needs. You need to understand the needs of a family. What do they need before you get into a deal. You have to look, when you come and you look around and you want to buy a multifamily, you have to see what the people need, what type of, if they go to church or a synagogue or a mosque or whatever they go, what they need. If they have a community center, if they have a shopping center right next by to buy stuff, and what type of stuff they have available and approachable. And to see, there's many things that you need to see on a family level what is needed, and then translate all that into numbers. That's very important, because that's economy. That's what makes an economy. And when it comes to, for example, an office, so you have to look in a whole different type of way, because you have to translate the numbers out of a business district needs. For example, if you have an office building in the middle of a residential area, there's not much to support that office in terms of the need of because every time they need to go out for a meeting, they have to go into the car and drive into downtown or to another area, or they don't have the coffee shops in the area that are fitting for business, or lunch time they have to drive elsewhere. So all these things you have to understand and translate all that stuff into the numbers, because that makes it a square footage, for example, per rent less. So if you're, for example, you have an office building in the middle of a residential area, the office type of building will have to be a medical office for the families because it's in a residential area, or physical therapy, or that kind of stuff. So your thought has to be translated into terms of square footage according to where you are. And obviously in retail, knowing the numbers here is a lot more. Because you need to know numbers of businesses and what they require. And that's why they have all these conferences, with ICSC, that people go to, and they try to understand what the needs, and it's very quick, and what is the need of this business and that business, and they teach you and they educate you about what their need is, so you can find them the right place. If it's an entrance from this road, then that road, and if a certain road had X amount of 50,000 cars a day, 25,000 cars a day, that will support this business, that business. Everything translate eventually into numbers, and those numbers translate into a pro forma, and I read, you said to know the numbers, by the way, that's the one thing I remember from way back, which is pretty cool. And I was selling apartments. I was selling high-end apartments for this huge developer, one of the largest developers in Israel. I used to sell high-end apartments, and I really wanted to grow. We really wanted to go into that, next level. I said, what do you need to know? There was this magazine, not a real estate magazine at all. It was like this community magazine that I just took, and was interviewing real estate entrepreneurs, moguls, whatever you want to call it. And one of the guys, and everybody gave a good tip, and there's one guy who's pretty big. I can't remember who it is, but they asked him, what is the most important thing in being in real estate and leading deals? And the first thing he said, you got to know the numbers. You just got to know the numbers.
No, I think that
got to me.
Yeah. But I think that's exactly it. I can tell you from the first deal I did where, I thought I knew the numbers well, and I knew the numbers that I knew, but I didn't know all the numbers, and I think that if you come into it with kind of a limited set of knowledge, I think this is kind of a neat kind of tie-in, because two things I've heard you say is, one is knowledge, you got to have the knowledge, and the other is the numbers, and you have to know the numbers, right? I mean, that's, and then the other thing that you mentioned there was the economy. I think that's so critical, because I think that there's also kind of a deal focus for a lot of people, where they're trying to figure out a deal, but not understanding the local economy or the marketplace kind of thing. So you don't really have that perspective, which is kind of what I'm hearing you say, is that if it's here, what are the needs of these people? Not, these people's needs are not these people's needs. You have to know your client, your tenant, your resident, so I think that's those are great points. Again, it all goes back to the same thing, knowledge.
Right. You know what? I met with a very big developer here in Israel. I think 2 months ago it was, and we discussed real estate. It was an exciting discussion, and he said something very cool. He said, in real estate, every country is different, every city is different, every neighborhood is different, every street is different, and every house on that street is different, or every building on that district is different. And I think that's the coolest thing, because you could have one angle, that makes an asset, makes a property exciting, and one angle makes a property very not exciting. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, and it's very cool what he said. So yeah, you need to know that kind of stuff. And also there's the perspective of the macro and the micro. I think that is very important to understand it. Like, for example, we are now at the peak of the market. Meaning not only real estate, but stocks and everything. It's like the S&P is like all-time high. It's like insane. So the big guys are not buying crazy. They do buy assets. They do go and purchase and go for acquisitions, but some of them more than others. There's still activity in the market, but it's much more careful, because if cap rates are in a certain place where they were not 2 or 3 years ago, then it means that something might happen. So this is something that no one can control. You can control the deal. You can control what type of deal you're going to buy. If it's good, if the tenants, to treat the tenants better, to try to manage, to be cost effective. There are many things you can control. You can try to monetize, to modify, whatever you want to call it. But the market is one thing that we can't control. So there has to be some appreciation to that. And that's why I heard a lot of big groups, they just accumulate now cash. They buy only certain things and certain types, and they're very disciplined and very conservative, and they accumulate cash for that day that might come. We don't know how big, if it's going to be a big drop, small drop, medium drop, but they wait for that.
Right. Well, and I think there's clearly history that shows there's market cycles. They run up to a point, and then something changes, and all of a sudden there's some people with problems that need help or need to get out, and that's when the opportunists are able to come in and take advantage of those with a problem. So makes a lot of sense. Yishai, I'm looking kind of just in kind of a, I don't want to get too long and crazy on this, but we've talked about, just the knowledge, the numbers, and I really like that part about the economy there. Is there something that, or is there one thing that you'd recommend for our listeners to do to grow their real estate portfolio?
So first of all, again, there's a difference between if you want to do it yourself or you want to join a group. I think that I'm an advocate of being a limited partner. If someone wants to just invest and grow in real estate, you can grow in real estate without being the driver. Meaning if you're a doctor or you're an accountant or a lawyer or just another professional or anything, and you love real estate, you hear about real estate, you're savvy about it, you want to invest, you want to own, I think that it's, instead of investing in single family homes and stuff like that, that sounds more approachable for everybody, and buying another house or buying another this, which is a huge liability. People don't understand that. It's a risk to have one home with one tenant or two tenants that you have to deal with yourself, or get a manager and deal with a manager firsthand. I think there's a huge advantage if you want to grow your portfolio, like you said, to be a limited partner, to find a group that does that consistently, that they buy assets, either multifamily, retail, office, but they are good and conservative, and I think it would be smart for the right person, for a person who wants to invest in real estate, to understand those groups, to go and put money with, I would say I would call it the mainstream money, okay? The mainstream money, the 60% of it, to put on asset classes that will produce the 6 to 10%, 6 to 8%, that kind of stuff, even 5 to 8%. Put the lower end in the types of very conservative, 2 to 4 and stuff like that, just to have that if you're into real estate. And if you want to go aggressive also on the certain high percentages, you can go with a developer, because and as a limited partner, I think that you own the property. The limited partnership, people need to understand, limited partnership is the owner of the property, is really the owner, because the general partner, legally, he is the leading of the deal, he has all the controls, but he is not owning the property. He owns the property because he's the entrepreneur. But legally, the limited partnership, that's why a property in LLC called an LP, the LP, because they own it. That's the bottom line. And you don't have to worry about anything. You have people who check it for you. You have banks who check it for you. And you have to. And I think that the key is for someone who wants to grow their portfolio and have I invested with this property, we invested with that property, and with the other property, and with this. I think it's not about so much of the property. It's about who are you doing it with, their track record. So you as an investor, you need to check not the property and go through the mishmash that a developer needs to go through or the operator, but you need to go through that check of who am I dealing with? Who's my partner here? Who is the guy who's doing the deal? And if you want to go savvy and go with a new guy, no problem. It's maybe the numbers will be much better for you, but do it with less, with not with the main core of the money. Don't do it with your, the main part. Do it with, the portion that you are willing to play with. That's my suggestion. There are big groups there with such names that institutional investors are putting money in, and you have groups that have friends and family that put money in and proved records that they have tripled their money or doubled their money over time. It's obviously not in a year. Yeah, right. But people made good investments and they moved from class to class to classes, and I think the key is great partnerships, and that's how they grow their portfolio. And the way to know a good guy like that is to start with one. Because people who want to invest, again, they hear about single family, because those guys who try to get equity get it either through friends or family, right? Those guys who are doing those big classes, big assets, friends and family, or private equity funds. So right. That's you have to. How do you say? That's my suggestion.
No, I
Limited,
like it.
I think is better.
No, I like it. Limited partnership and know who you're dealing with. We're going right back to the know, huh? You got to know. I like it.
You got to know who you're dealing with. Look, I'll tell you a story. You're going to appreciate that. I have a friend. It's a sort of a family, and he's promoting one of the huge operator who takes office class, large buildings in the center of town, prime location areas, and he takes and turn it around. Meaning he takes a good situation, not a bad situation like a value add, but he takes it and he manages a lot better, and he makes it like golden eggs. Those big office buildings. He's very good at it. This is an old man, and he has a huge company and so on. So this guy who's talking to me, he's telling me, listen, I know help raise the money, and you're talking about large amounts. If a raise is like $20-30 million, very, very large amounts. So he said to me, his dad is also 90-something years old. He said, I asked my dad, Dad, did you invest with him, with this guy who does these office buildings? And he said, yeah, I did. I gave him $2 million. So I said, Dad, did you check the deal? So his dad, who is a guy who owned several mega businesses, fortune company, very big companies, said to him, I didn't have to. I said, what? You didn't check the deal, Dad? So he said, listen, I'm 95 years old, whatever it is, and I known him for I don't know how long. I trust him, and that was it. So so obviously you can't do that on your first investment, God forbid. But it just shows that once you are on the train and you are going with someone that you trust, as we said, it makes it a lot better. It makes it a lot easier to join those groups.
I like it. Hey, before we wrap this up, what's the best way for the listeners to get in touch with you?
To get in touch with me, first of all, I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on every, I guess, social media platform. Not every, but I would say LinkedIn, Facebook. Those are the main things. If you type Yishai Breslauer, you will find me for sure. That's the best way to contact me, I guess.
Got it.
And also, the other show, you could just show my emails. I have no problem. People could email me directly. I get my emails. I read them. No problem at all.
All right. And I'll list that.
Sure.
I'll list all those in the show notes there, so people can find you and reach out and get in touch. Yishai, I want to say thanks again for taking the time to talk. I look forward to doing it again.
My pleasure. It was really fun.
All right.
Take care of yourself. Thank you.
All right. For our listeners, if you like the show, share the show with someone you know. It's easy to do. You can share our interview with Yishai and help others grow their real estate portfolio. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. That's all we've got this week. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio.